Today's topic is even a little practice will save you from dire fears and colossal sufferings. And this reading from the Bhagavad Gita, it's so reassuring that smile, Krishna's smile in your heart, not the world falling apart, not your health even, not your wealth, not your possessions, not any of those things, but Krishna's smile in your heart is what the most important thing for the devotee, which means God's love in your heart, God's protection in your heart, God's light shining in your heart and all around you, the joy that you feel in the midst of suffering, underneath it all. This is God's presence in our lives. And if we have that, what does it matter? Whatever else happens around us. It's not our world. We're travelers here. We don't know from whence we came or where we're going. We've come alone. We basically, until we meet our guru, travel alone, and then we leave alone. But always with God and Guru's smile. And I was remembering some beautiful examples of devotees who they couldn't do a lot. They were doing just a little of the practice, but it was saving them. I was thinking of Gyanamata, who was in bed for 20 years, ailing with illness. And Master kept her in that body, and he was helping her in his work. She was helping him, rather, in his work. And Gyanamata would energize sometimes from her chair. She couldn't even stand, but she was still doing the practices. And sometimes Master would call for her. He would call on the phone, and another devotee, disciple would respond, would answer, and would kind of quietly tell Master that she wasn't doing so well that day. And so then when she would hang up, Gyanamata would say, "Now, who was that?" And they would tell her, and she said, "Listen, when he calls, you say yes and make it snappy," meaning that she wanted to keep putting out energy. Keep trying. And that's what this statement means. Even if you can only do a little bit, keep trying. And there was that fellow Horace, who was the spastic devotee disciple. At the end of his life, he couldn't even walk anymore. And he would just lie on the grass at the ashram and pull weeds, just to show his devotion and his serviceful energy. If that's all he could do, he would do that. And I remember Swamiji, near the end of his life, he couldn't do different times, but I remember this particularly, he couldn't do Kriya very well because of his heart. And I remember one of our friends, she went to Swamiji for counseling about her meditation. And she said, "Oh, Swamiji, I can't meditate. I'm having trouble with my meditations now." And his response to her was so sweet. He said, "So am I." And so we have to remember that it's the effort that we put out. There was that fellow Bernard, that disciple who would, I believe it was him, he had to roll on the bed several times before he could roll off the bed to be able to stand up. He had double curvature of the spine, but they kept trying no matter what the circumstances were. And that's what this means. Master's thrown us a lifeline. And whatever happens around us is going to happen. Then there'll be something else. Then there'll be something else. And There was a friend of Swamiji's, Swami Kriyanandaji, who had this dream, or I don't know if it was a vision, but of Babaji. And they were asking Babaji when they saw him, why don't you make everything right on earth? It's a disaster. And Babaji's response was, that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to bring in the light. And through everything that we're doing, we're bringing in the light into our own beings. We're bringing in the light into this world. We're bringing into the light to all people who are seeking. And that light is what changes things. It changes our consciousness and those around us. And it's such an important time to remember these words of the great ones. One who said, this can wait, that can wait, but my search for God cannot wait. And Lahiri Mahashaya, who said that if you bring God into the summer of your life, he'll be there in the winter. But in the summer, people forget God. But if we remember God and build a foundation, a base on which nothing can really shake us, then no matter what happens, that little practice adds up to more practice and more practice and more practice until we build a solid base. And yesterday, probably many of you, maybe all of you, attended the half-day retreat that we had. What a wonderful time that was. So many blessings, so many people felt. So to have a moment when you go inside, when you disconnect from the world and do your practices, disconnect from the phone and from the computer and from social media and from the world's troubles, just to disconnect and go inside and spend that time chanting, listening to Swamiji. What beautiful talks, and meditating. And I remember several of those lines from the talks yesterday where Swamiji was encouraging us to meditate more. I mean, we can say a little practice, but we need to, as we can, do more and more. He encouraged us to take a seclusion, take a retreat by yourself, be alone. And I love what he said. He said, just be by yourself and shut your mouth and don't talk to anybody. I know that's difficult, but to be able to really go inside and have that time. And the practice doesn't just mean doing Kriya or Hamsa or Om energization. The practice also means being in the stillness, being in the silence, inward prayer, japa, experiencing the vibrations, the light, the bliss, the joy of God. Even a taste of that, where you want to go further into it, even seeing a speck of light, like Rajasi Janakananda, after he had been seeing so much light in all of his meditations, then it turned to darkness at one point, and all he could see was that one speck of light. And he didn't stop his practices. And for us, sometimes there's darkness that will come. There's different things that will happen. And I was remembering when I went to Ananda for the first time, I went and I was so enthusiastic about everything. And then at a certain point, I just decided that after a few years, I just didn't want to be there anymore. It was like a dark cloud just came over me. And I went back to my home, and I thought I would be fine on my own. And that's when I was really just doing a little bit of the practice. I could barely meditate. Soon as I lost the vibration, the magnetism of Ananda and the devotees and Swamiji, I was swimming on my own, and that was difficult. And I remember I got home, I had a big picture of Master on my wall, and that fell off the wall and cracked right across his face. And I thought, oh, that just couldn't be a good omen. Then my Kriya beads broke and they fell all over the floor and all the beads. And I knew I was in trouble, but I did keep my devotion and I did keep my Kriya very little, but I kept it going. And after about 3 years, it took that long, then it was like I woke up and I thought, I'm not going to do this. I'm going back to Ananda. But I was hanging on by a thread. And from that, I was able to get back. And I never left again. And I remember another time when I was going through a rough time, and I said to Swamiji, I'm trying everything. I'm meditating more. I've got more kriyas going. I'm affirming. I'm chanting more. I'm going around helping other people. I'm doing seva, and things just don't seem to be changing. But I was trying my best. And Swamiji said, don't worry. And I thought, he's not worried. I'm the one worrying. And the next day, I know he prayed for me. Grace comes into it if you put out the energy. Very next day, I woke up and that heaviness was gone. So we have to remember that little practice, even a little, it's like we're still hanging on and the masters are helping us. And Devi Ji said a similar story that she was doing everything and it seemed like things weren't working. And Swamiji said, it's really grace that changes us, but we have to do our part. So that part is our practices to build a strong base, a strong foundation. And I believe I was able to get back to Ananda because I had that strong foundation that I set in those months or however long that was when I was at Ananda. And then when I left, I had that base which held me and brought me back. And so let's remember that as we go forward, having time on your own, having time when you meditate longer, once a week, all of these various things, they really help us and they bring us back to what's essential on the path. And I've been very inspired in this difficult time that we've had over the past month up here and all over India, around the world, but specifically in India the past few weeks. I've been so inspired by people who really have been serving heroically. Really. I know one man who lost his son and his father in the same month, a Kriyaban. And he held strong, being centered. And it took him a few weeks, but he said, Dhyanaji, I want to serve. I don't want to just not do anything. Please allow me to serve. And he also was offering consultation or talking with people, other people who had lost people who were close to them. This is such a beautiful spirit. And another person who lost their spouse, who said afterwards, I want to go and serve where my spouse was serving. This is in Vrindavan. I want to go and serve there and do my part. And you know, their hearts are hurting, they're in pain, but even a little practice of seva, of reaching out for other people is saving them from more pain that they would have experienced. And finally, I'll close with this story of a beautiful story of Corrie ten Boom from the book, The Hiding Place. She and her sister, Betsy, her family, several family members they were put in a concentration camp during the Second World War. And her sister, as Corey puts it in the book, a wonderful book, by the way, was even more deeply spiritual and have more faith than Corey. And she would always tell Corey, no matter what happens, we're gonna have faith in God, and we're gonna do our part, and God will take care of us. And Corey, no, I don't know, I don't think so. And so one time they were at the barracks where they were living. Horrible situation. But Betsy always found something to cling to of God's. So someone had given them a little Bible, the New Testament of the Bible, had given, one of the guards or someone had given that to them. And they would have prayer meetings and read that Bible and pray in the barracks. And now they would have been beaten, maybe killed if they were found praying there in a prayer group. They would gather whoever wanted to, and they would sit together and pray. And but there were mosquitoes and lice just everywhere. And Corey kept saying, we just can't thank God for these insects. I don't care what you say. And Betsy kept saying, no, God is here. God is going to help us no matter what. And this is for a reason. And she said, no, I just don't accept it. And so what happened one day was they had one of these prayer groups. They were sneaking to pray together. And then they saw from the window some guards walking by. And as I said, they would have been beaten terribly had they been seen praying. And so they see the guards and everyone's afraid. And then they hear one guard telling the other, well, let's not go in there because it's full of mosquitoes and lice. And they just walked by. And Betsy said to Corey, see, I told you, God is with us no matter what happens, that if we just do our best, he will protect us, he will be with us, he will love us and care for us. And it turned out that Betsy died in that concentration camp. She was the older sister. And Master said something interesting that Swamiji repeated to us, or I hope I have time for the story, but he said that Master said, Swamiji said about Master said that the devotees, the disciples, would be protected in times of trouble. And then I was there when Swamiji said it here in India, and I just felt, oh, thank God. And then he said, but even if you die, he'll still protect you. And I went, oh no, what does that mean? But really, it means that the guru is there when you're not in a body, before you come into a body, after you leave that body, when you come into the next, and the next lifetime, and the next lifetime, that the guru is always guiding you. Like that beautiful story of Kashi, that young boy, I think he was 12 years old or 10 or 12. And he was, Master was telling some of the boys what their future would be. They were asking him, this was when Master had the school there in Ranchi, I believe it was. And so before that, everybody with Master said, oh, you will do this. And this boy, Kashi, said, well, what about me? And Master said, oh, you're going to die soon. And then Master went, oh, he felt badly that he said that, but it was the truth. And so after the boy came up to Master and he said, would you bring me back onto the path? Help me when I die and bring me back and to the teachings. And Master finally, he said, okay, Divine Mother says so, I will find you. I will bring you back. such a beautiful story of faith. And the boy could have asked for anything. He could have said, don't let me die, or whatever. He said, would you bring me back? So Master, after, it was about 6 months later, and Master said, I think Kashi's been reborn. And then he would go around, he'd have his hands up like this in Calcutta, and he was feeling for the boy, Kashi, and all the people around him thought, oh, he's gone a little bit crazy. Master didn't care. He would just walk around. He was just feeling. What a blessing to have a guru. And so then at a certain point, he said, oh, his fingers were tingling. He says, oh, that's my boy. I think I found my boy. And he followed his feeling to a particular house, and he went there, he knocked on the door. This would never happen in America, but he was a Swami, and the mother came, the woman came, she was pregnant. Master told them what would happen, and they believed him, and he was born. They gave him his old name back again, Kashi, and Master said, I took that boy and guided him to a Himalayan master to continue his training. And that's what we have to remember, that Divine Mother and the masters, they're really in charge of our lives. If we just do our little part, just the little practice and have faith in them, then all will come up right. Somehow things will work out in the way, maybe not the way we think, but in the way that God has planned for us. And let us remember that Master said a smooth life is not a victorious life. And Gyanamata, who said, your religion will be tested in the cold light of day. But if we hang on, we'll be able to be pulled through into the light of God, the light of our masters. God bless you all.